I'm the last survivor of the Holocaust in our family.
Behind the words, pictures, and artifacts in the museum are people whose stories of survival and hope come alive to inspire new generations of upstanders. One by one, these stories stir the soul.
Can there really be hope for us?
Mine is 4018. My sister was 4017.
Holocaust survivors, their descendants, liberators, champions of justice, and courageous upstanders ask only this: hear my story, so that the lessons they teach will echo for generations.
I will never meet someone else like my father. But there are many of us who, if we come together, can keep his voice alive.
These stories will change you. They will move you to action, inspiring the best of humanity every day.
I'm Corey Silbernagel, Director of Collections and Exhibitions at the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center. Today, we have been welcomed into the home of Lisa MacVittie, a local Holocaust survivor. Many of the stories we share at the Holocaust and Humanities Center are stories of escape through Europe. Lisa's story of escape is a lot different, and I'm thrilled to be here today and to welcome you, Lisa,
Thank you.
to our Hear My Story segment. Thank you for hosting us. One thing I think about when I think about you is that before we met each other, I knew very little about escape and survival in Shanghai, China. I didn't really know this part of the Holocaust. And through learning your story, I've learned, I've grown, and I'm really grateful to be able to sit here with you today and have you share this story with us.
Thank you.
So let's get started. Tell me where you were born.
In
Tell me
Berlin.
about your early life.
Berlin, Germany.
Okay.
My maiden name was Isaac. Let's face it, how much more Jewish can you get than have a name like Isaac? So we had no business in living in Europe at that time anymore. So my parents decided to vacate Germany and head for the hills,
Yeah.
the Swiss Alps.
Well, and you were born in 1932, right? So you were born very shortly before the Nazi Party came to power. You were young. You probably don't remember a lot of those early years, but are there some things you do remember of life in Berlin, or things your parents shared with you?
Well, I was 6 going on 7 at the time that we left, but I also had polio. And at that time, the general consensus was that polio was contagious. So they hauled you off to another hospital. And my parents had to get me out of that hospital in order to just get away from the Nazis. And actually in 1936, I think. Yeah, 1936, that's when the Nazi Party really came to power, and it was all because there was one young boy that objected to the treatment that his father got in France. And he was publicly beaten to death. So as a result, that gave Hitler the excuse for, what do you call it?
Right.
Whatever
Right.
it is.
Yeah. Well, and persecution of Jews happened quickly
Yeah.
and somewhat quietly over time. What drew your parents to leave? Was there a certain
Yes.
moment in time that they decided we can't stay?
Well, when what they call Kristallnacht, which is Crystal Night, that was when they burned all the synagogues, all the Bibles and everything else. They just destroyed, and anybody who had a store, they destroyed it. And so that's when my parents and my uncle and aunt decided we got to get out of here.
How did they decide where to go? What happened next?
Well, first of all, nobody in this world, except one place, was allowing Jewish people into the country. And so that place was China, or Shanghai in particular, and there was Harbin also. But they're the two major group where they said there were 20,000 of us in that Honkyu gathering we had. And it was just, we had to get out, and that was the only open port. So we headed south to Italy. My grandmother, we were at their house the night before we were to leave. And so as a result, she got the family together and very quietly and all that, and had a nice dinner. And as we were leaving, my grandmother took my hand and she said, put something in it, and she says, now I want you to wear this for me. When your mom and dad say it's okay to wear it. And it was a necklace with a little Star David on it. Now, she gave Ingrid, my sister Ingrid, hers also. And evidently, something I didn't know up until just the last 15 years, she must have given one to my aunt also. Well, my mother took my sister and me, and she took these necklaces and put them in a pocket in the back of a stroller they had rigged up for me because I was in a cast from the waist down. And so she put that way down into that pocket there on the back of a stroller, so in case they did get stopped, they weren't advertising,
Right.
So anyways, flash forward a bit, 16 years ago, my uncle passed away in Los Angeles. I was the one that was, I was to dispose of all of it, whatever stuff he had. Well, I flew out to Los Angeles and got there at 9 o'clock at night, as there's nothing that I can do tonight. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't concentrate on what I had to do, which legal processes and all that stuff. So I couldn't sleep. I looked around and I said, there's got to be something I can do. I can't sleep. I can't keep pacing like that. So I decided, well, my aunt had passed away about 6 years earlier, and my uncle hadn't uncovered all of the reflections, stuff like my aunt's, what do they call it? It's a dresser drawer type thing with a mirror in the
Her
middle.
vanity.
Vanity,
Ah.
right, yeah, her vanity.
Yeah.
And it was still covered. And I says, okay, Aunt Harriet, time to uncover you. Any time I was out there, I always did things that he wanted me to do. He never asked me to uncover Aunt Harriet. So I decided, well, time has come. I've got to do it now or at a later date, So I went, there were 3 jewelry boxes there. So I picked the middle one up, put it in the dining room table, and just tipped it. And when I brought it back, there was this little chain like you would on a bracelet, a safety chain, between the felt of this box and the wooden part on the outside. So I'm just pulling on this thing, and it keeps coming up and coming up. And there's a Star of David, the necklace like I had that I boohooed all the way from Germany to back to Shanghai, or however far, that I would never have, because my mother and my father had forgotten that carriage that they rigged up was still on the tarmac when the train left. So the necklaces were gone. And so I had kept pulling, and I says, okay. And then it dawned on me, my grandmother must also have given my aunt one of those. Now I have that one, and it felt just like my grandmother was on my shoulder up here and is saying, okay, you can quit howling about it, not having one, you know. So I have it in a frame now.
Wow, that's a beautiful story.
So,
I'm almost speechless just thinking about that. You know, this
well, I was
story that spans
6.5
decades.
years old, you know, and
Yeah.
I was just being a normal kid.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine, you know, when you're 6 years old, I have a daughter that's 6 years old. Little things like that given by loved ones,
Right.
particularly a grandmother, that's so special and so important. And that gift is being given to you at this point in your life where I'm sure,
Everything was upside down.
certainly,
You know,
absolutely.
when I was hospitalized, Ingrid and I had one bedroom to share, and my brother, Joe, he had the other bedroom, and then my parents. Well, that I was taken out of and put into an isolation hospital. And then from that, to go on the road, even though I had to be pushed, pulled, or carried, because I couldn't bend with that
Yeah.
cast.
Yeah.
So, you know, so many things were happening so fast at that time.
Yeah. And I imagine then losing that necklace,
Yeah,
that treasure.
That was that was traumatic, I
It's
guess.
devastating, yeah. How special, though, many years later to then.
Like I say, it's like she
See
was
it.
sitting on my shoulder over here and says, you can quit howling now.
That's beautiful. So let's talk about your escape a little bit more.
Okay.
You said goodbye to your grandmother that day.
Yeah,
She didn't leave with you.
no.
What happened to your grandmother?
Well, up until recent years, and it's very recent, I never knew what happened to her. I found my grandfather where he was buried. But my grandfather also they came in the middle of the night. My grandparents had a German Shepherd dog. In the middle of the night, they tried to break the door down. And the dog, of course, naturally attacked. So they shot the dog, and my grandfather was coming down the steps directly behind his dog, and they also shot and killed him right there. And that much I could find out from people that were still living that weren't necessarily Jewish. And then my grandmother, I could never find out. They took her, but I could not find out what did they do with her. She was 63 years old. She was a diabetic, a type A diabetic. So how far could they have gone with her? You know, never could find that out. Up until the JCC, not the C, it's not the Jewish
Family service.
Family
Jewish
service,
family
yeah.
service. Mhm.
came along. I don't even, I remember how I get there now. One of the gentlemen, I'm also a veteran, okay. So one of the gentlemen at the Legion Post over here, my husband had told him part of the story, and he says, you know, I have I don't know whether she was a niece, a cousin, or a friend, I don't know, but she's still over there. She, as we were leaving, this guy said his niece or whatever, she would probably like to see me. And so we went over there, and as we were leaving the museum, I told you I was impressed with it because
Yes.
it was really done tastefully, you know, not all the gore stuff.
Yeah.
So she, as we were leaving, I told her, I says, you know, to this day, I have no idea what they did with my grandmother. She says, well, you got time to come back to my office. And of course, I had a ride over there, and I looked at the gentleman that gave me the ride. And I says, do you? He says, well, I don't have to be anywhere until 6 tonight. So, yeah, why don't we go back? So we went back to her office, and she put something in her computer and immediately got a whole printout of what they did with my grandmother. They had her in 3 different countries over there, where they moved her from place to place to place, and then finally in Belrussia, is it? They euthanized her or killed her. I never knew that up until just recent years, so it's been maybe 10, 15 years now.
Wow. You know, when you share the story of what happened to your grandmother and grandfather with me, it reminds me how few people even had the opportunity to escape.
That's right.
And I'm so happy that you have this story of survival to share with us.
Well, it's what you do, what you must. And my parents were concerned. There were 3 of us there. And, you got to get your kids out first.
Yeah.
They should be first. And so I guess they sold everything they could sell without raising a question.
And who left with you?
Just my uncle, my aunt, and my aunt's father.
Okay. Tell me about the journey to Shanghai. You told me about, them picking you up from the hospital, you having to travel in this cart.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit more about what that was like. What do you remember from that time?
Really, like we wound up in Italy, and we had to eat. So we went into a not so nice restaurant, because I remember my mother didn't want to really eat there. But we had to stay undercover, more or less.
Sure.
And I remember slurping the spaghetti, go like that, like any kid would do. My mother told me the first time that's wrong, don't do that again. Of course, I couldn't resist. There it went. The 3rd time, she smacked me right alongside not this leg, the left leg. So I remember that.
She didn't want to draw attention to your
That's
family.
That's just it, but
Yeah. Well,
how can you not draw attention when you've got a child in a cast on a stroller, So you already were jeopardized as far as that goes.
Sure.
But I remember that. I also remember I do not remember anything how we got from Rome to Naples. We had to be in Naples in order to catch this ship that we had been able to acquire tickets for.
I see.
And so I have no idea how we got from Rome to Naples. None whatsoever. I don't know why, but I just don't remember anything. Maybe I did a lot of sleeping in those days, when you're being rolled around on a flatbed.
Of course.
So maybe I was sleeping the whole way, but it's too far a distance. I don't know whether we took a train or if there was some underground activity done. I don't know. But I do remember as we were getting ready to enter the ship, there was lightning on the horizon, and my brother, who was 6 years older than me, he told me the story about how if the ship gets hit, it'll sink. Lightning hits it, it'll sink. And then he looked at me and he says, and you in that cast, you'll never be able to come up again.
Oh, no.
Needless to say, I did the howling thing again. So my father was not happy. Not happy with my brother at all.
I'm certain.
Because he was old enough to know better than that.
Well, there's, there always has to be a good amount of healthy sibling
Oh yeah.
torture in family
I
relationships.
think my brother's whole aim in life was to terrorize his two younger sisters.
Oh no. So, how long was that ship journey?
About 6 weeks.
It's a long time. How did your family pass
Well,
the days?
actually, after Joe told me that, they actually had to take the cast off, and it took a special kind of saw to do that with, evidently, and they put me asleep to take it off because I was
Wow.
inconsolable,
Sure.
and scared stiff.
Wow.
So
when the cast came off,
Right.
as you're recovering from polio, was it difficult to regain your strength?
actually, it was. I've got a picture where my mother and I are walking away from the camera, and you can still see how far I bent on the right side.
Yeah.
But like I say, Joe was something else.
What was your relationship with your sister like at that time? You two were much closer in age.
Yeah, we're
about
only
a
a
apart.
year and 2 months,
Yeah.
14 months. Actually, she was always the good sister. I was the mischievous one. So, no, we were close sisters.
Yeah.
She always looked out for me. I remember one time when, just towards the end of the war, the American Air Force over there were ordered to bomb. They were bombers, and they were going to hit Japan. That was just before the atomic attack. Just shortly before it, they were supposed to bomb the heck out of Tokyo. And well, when they got there, Tokyo was covered in clouds. They couldn't see what they were bombing. And in those days, they opened up the bomb hedge when they think they could see it, and it wasn't done with computers or anything like that. It was all manual. And they radioed back to them, said, we can't see Tokyo. Tokyo is fogged in. So they said, all right, go ahead and go on to Shanghai and hit them. And we were hit pretty heavy over there. Well, Ingrid grabbed my hand, and she says, we got to run. From the school where we were at to where we were kept was quite a distance, about a 20-minute walk if you wanted to gather, compare it to. It's about a 20-minute walk one way, and Ingrid and I decided we got to get home. So she dragged me through this field that I had no idea where she was going, but she got us home. So she's always been a big sister, But here I am, all by my lonesome, left of the last of the Mohicans.
But today you have several generations of
Yes.
family.
Yes.
I think that's a beautiful legacy to leave.
Well, that's the whole point in life, is to enjoy life and, well, just live it. Don't just drag through it.
I think that's really great advice. That's something I should really take to heart and carry with me every day personally. So you and your sister were very close, and I don't think I've ever heard that story of her telling you to run during
Oh,
that
she-
bombing.
yeah.
She sounds quite brave.
She was
Incredible.
the sensible one. I was the daring one.
Yeah, yeah. So you were both, and the others that traveled with you and your family, you were all in Shanghai for a long time.
Yeah.
Tell me, before we get into what life was like and how it changed over those years, what was it like when you arrived? What happened?
Well, as we were getting off the ship, my mother said to my father, Kurt, what heaven have we gotten us into? The odor of the pier, where the ships land, the odor from that was horrendous. My mother was what you could call a clean freak. She'd polished something she'd already polished before 3 or 4 times. And for her, this had to have been horrendous. You still had, from the Sino-Japanese War, that was still pondering around over there, where they killed each other and left the bodies in the street. And there's no garbage collector over there at all, so it all went by the side of the street. And the odor, like I say, the odor in itself must have been horrendous for my mother. And what do you want to call it? They washed clothes a whole lot different than what my mother was used to. And they would hang them, they overhead on the top of the house, they always had, on two houses apart, over at the top they had ropes, and they'd hang their wet clothes out on it and then pull it over a bit and to the next spot and hang the next item you had on it. And it was all in the city, stinky air. And my mother remarked on those, how can they wear these clothes like that so many times? I heard her say that. It was just, I think that bothered her more than the fact that it was really, basically, comparatively, I should say, they lived dirty. They were not clean, not healthy, and it was so different.
Yeah, it sounds like a really different.
It's a culture shock.
World. Yeah.
It's a culture shock.
Yeah. So where did you live? How did your family kind of, for lack of a better word, settle into this new life?
Well, Hongqiu, or then they call it Hong Kong now, but Hongqiu was always the poor level for the Chinese. And also for a lot of the people that came before us to Shanghai, they opened up stores, European-type stores, like shoes and groceries and stuff like that, that you need for every day.
Mm-hmm.
They opened up stores for it. It became a Jewish community almost, the entire Hongqiu. And the Chinese nor the Japanese, now you got to remember China belonged to Japan at that time already, because Japan won the Sino-Japanese War. So the Chinese and the Japanese didn't have a problem with the European influx. So while living there, at least you had some normal outlets, like you needed a pair of shoes desperately, not like me. I don't know how many pairs of shoes, but you had one pair if you were lucky.
Yeah.
So we integrated with that. And of course, the school I was going to at that time already, by the time I was 8, I think, I started kindergarten because it was an English school. Sir Kaduri was the owner, the Kaduris were owners of schools in Shanghai, in China.
Yeah.
And so they allowed the school for us to be schooled, but we had to take Japanese in school, which of course went in one ear and out the other ear.
Yeah. Is this the school that you began to learn English in?
We could not, we weren't allowed to use any other language in English in school, because all the kids that were going to the school there came from all different parts of the world, and that would have been mayhem, really, So they just decided English only. So this is all we were allowed to use, and you learn very quickly when you're a child. You're like a sponge, you sop up everything.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and I imagine at this time there's many other refugee families
Oh, yeah,
whose children are attending this school.
right. They were all that way.
Ah, interesting.
So
So while you and your siblings are at school learning, what were your parents doing? How did they get by?
I really don't know. I do know that there was a relief organization there, and they would make like your kitchens now.
Like a soup kitchen
There you
or
go, yeah.
parish kitchen.
Yeah, and actually, there's one lady here in Cincinnati whose parents probably are the ones that helped keep us alive. They had a butcher shop, and her father was a butcher.
And did you live with your aunt and uncle that traveled with you?
No, not really.
Okay.
No, he and his father-in-law and his wife, they lived a little ways away, not too much
Yeah.
really, but a little bit.
When you arrived in Shanghai, it was not yet occupied by the Japanese.
Yes, it was.
It was, okay.
Yeah.
So what, you talked a little bit about having to learn Japanese in school. What were some other ways that this occupation was realized in the Shanghai ghetto?
Well, they put us all together. Actually, they made the rules, and the rules had to be enforced by inmates, actually, or whatever you want to call us. And they had to get permission from Goya. He was from the good faction of Japan. And he was the overseer for the Shanghai ghetto. And you had to have permission to leave the Honkyu area at all. They gave you a card or something if you get stopped on the other side of that imaginary fence.
Sure.
Then you better have one of those passes.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds, it sounds that although your family had escaped, Nazi Germany, life was still really very difficult,
Yes.
and very restrictive.
Yes.
And, it's hard to balance that survival, yet also struggle. What happened upon the end of the war? How do you remember learning about the war coming to an
Actually,
end?
we did have a radio we didn't have it, but there was a radio in Hong Kong, and the Japanese never could find it. It was a shortwave, and it traveled between, like Joe would have it today, Andrew would have it the next day, or for whatever time they said.
Interesting. Wow.
They just moved that
yeah.
thing around, so they couldn't find it. The Japanese couldn't find
So
it.
is this how you got your news of what,
That's how
what
we
was
got
happening?
the news, right?
Wow.
And then also after the war, they had this huge, like a cork board, where you pin up a message or something on it. That's before you get stickies,
Sure.
the sticky
Yeah.
papers.
Yep.
They had this board, and on it would be John Smith is looking for Adam or somebody, and that had supposedly, like they had incoming messages that they pinned up on there every morning at about 4 o'clock. Those messages came through, and they were put up on that board. And my father would check the board each time to find out who's left in Berlin, you know. And of course, none of my family, my father's family, survived that didn't get out. So it was, he kept looking, though, checked the board every morning.
Yeah. When the war ended, did your family begin to plan to leave Shanghai?
Oh, yes, by all means.
Yeah.
My mother, but we weren't going back to Germany, that's for sure.
So where to? How did they?
My father talked about the United States, and my mother did too. So, but she did not speak a word of English. She's been a mom, you know. She didn't have a profession, and when you check back, the old quota was issued on what you could give to this country by coming here. And you had to be, free from any legal stuff you had. You know, you just had to be just a very nice person that had something to offer to this country. Well, my mother has been a mom, and that's it. And by that time, my father was gone. And so my mother is left with 2 teenage girls and a baby. And she must have had courage beyond compare to go into a country where you don't speak the language, you have nothing to offer them, and here you are, getting out of it.
Yeah. How did she work to get an American visa to come to the United States?
Well, we were on the list before my father got killed. We were on the list of my father's sister and her husband. They had come, instead of going the route we went, they went through into Canada. And then came from Canada to New Jersey, and so they were our hub, so to
I
speak,
see.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to, if we got to the States, we had to go to New Jersey. So she and her husband sponsored us. We had sponsors.
Okay. And how old were you when?
16,
16.
going on
So-
17, just short of 17.
So again, so many years have
10 years.
passed. What was it like first arriving in the United States as a teenager?
Awesome.
Yeah. What are some of the things you remember?
Well, I remember the ship coming into the harbor over there, going under the Golden Gate. And it was the last ship of refugees that came out of China. We got off the ship under the Golden Gate Bridge, and everybody that was on that ship, they were all on deck. I couldn't believe how many people were on that ship. I'd never realized there were that many people. And it was awesome to come into that harbor there in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And the HIAS organization, I guess, had something to do with it.
With this ship of refugees. Another interesting part of your story to me is that, you didn't arrive through New York Harbor in New York City like so many Holocaust survivors did. You came through San Francisco, and I think that's fascinating. How long were you in San Francisco? You had said you needed to go to New Jersey.
Right, and when we got to the port by daylight, there was somebody standing down there with a big sign, Isaac. My mother says, what's that? I said, I don't know, we'll go find out. And so this lady she immediately took us to a hotel, and we remained there for maybe 10 days. I don't know for sure how long, but there was, I don't know, back in the years that they had places where kids can go and play these remember the ball machines they used to have?
Pinball.
Pinball.
Arcades.
There you go, arcade.
Yeah, love those.
There was one down the street, and I couldn't figure out what they were doing, but it was fantastic. And I remember thinking, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and like I say, my mother had to have been courageous beyond compare, because when you've got two teenage girls, you have no way of income. You don't speak the language. What happens? Definitely nothing good. But my mother didn't realize how well a mother she was. This woman put us on a train, and off to New Jersey we went. And as the train was rolling, my sister and I were looking out, just watching the scenery. And one of us said to the other one, I wonder what they got lots for sale of. All the signs were lots for sale. The gentleman that was in the seat in front of us there came up over like Kilroy was here, you just see the head and the hands. And he says, where are you two girls from?
So he was eavesdropping a little bit.
A little bit, right? Never thought of it that way. But he cleared that one up for us. So we realized we definitely had to learn another language here.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. So you had learned English in school.
even though we spoke English, we didn't speak the same English.
Yeah. Now you need to learn how to walk the walk.
There you go.
So you came to New Jersey.
And there again was somebody, Isaac. Actually, we were in Chicago. We had to change trains in Chicago. And there was this lady again, another lady, Isaac. So we went there, my mother and my baby brother and my sister and me. She put us on a train, in a taxi, to get to the other train station, because the station we were on from California didn't go straight through to New Jersey. So you had to go to another train station to catch it. Now, can you imagine? You have two teenage girls and a baby, and you're getting on a train with in a cab with a woman that you don't know. It had to have been horrendous.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think not only about your mother's bravery and courage, but also just her perseverance in doing what she had to do. I think. And
she lived to be 88.
Yeah, that speaks volumes. And then to go on to live a long life.
And a not so bad life she had. She worked for minimum wage all of her life. But she made do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's move forward a little bit in time. You've shared your story of your childhood, escape from Berlin, and then now to coming to the United States and rebuilding your life here. Your sister doing that, your mother doing that. Where did you go as an adult? Specifically, tell me about your military service.
Okay. There isn't much to tell. I made my citizenship in November. You had to have 4 years in country before you could become a citizen. And in December, I joined the Air Force, the American Air Force. I felt that there were so many young people like myself at that time that had had to go to war. Some of them came back, others came back in a box. And I always felt that I owed them something. So that's how come I decided to join the Air Force. And off I went to Texas.
What was training like for you?
Actually, they don't compare to my mother, let me tell you that.
So she's really the one that prepared you for military
I
service?
think so. If we were told to do something, my parents didn't have to remind us twice or 3 times. You know, 1 time is all. And the same thing is in the military.
Yeah.
And you know, my grandchildren, I got a lot of them that were all in the service. My own children all but one of mine were in the service. And the only reason Kurt wasn't in the service was because he was born with a bad heart. And the Air Force had to pay because my husband was a lifer in the service. And so the Air Force paid for Kurt's medical bills.
So you and your husband were in the Air Force?
Yes, as we met in the Air Force.
How many children did you go on to have?
4.
4 children. And where did you end up? You didn't come to Cincinnati until a bit later in life.
Yeah. Well, we signed when basic training was in Lackland, Texas. Okay, and your training, depending on your career field that they trained you in, you had to go to the various different schools. Well, my husband and I wound up in the same school. He and I had the same, what they called an AFSC. That's whatever you were trained in, schooling additional to what you know. So so that's how we met, is in that school. And that was in Texas. And then after that, women weren't allowed in the service unless they had no children or no husband. You couldn't be married and be in the service for women at that time.
Yeah.
And but finally, I don't know how we managed it, but we got permission to get married. And then with the condition was that if I got pregnant, child would come first and I'd be out of the service. So 2 years later, I got pregnant. And I was out of the service then.
And then you became a mother.
Yeah, the same week that I was out of the service, my husband also got orders to go to Germany. And I had trepidations about going to Germany, but I decided, I looked in the mirror and I says, "You idiot. They'd never know you can speak German as fluently as I could unless you told them so." So
yeah.
They wouldn't let me fly even because I was pregnant. They wouldn't let me fly over. I had to take a ship. I don't know which is worse, a ship or
a long ship passage or a quick flight.
Comparatively, I don't think there's much of a bet as to who would be in the best interest of.
Yeah.
But anyways, I took a ship over. And he met me in Paris. Well, from the port, the ship landed onto Paris. I had to take a train. And he met me there in Paris then. And the rest is history. We were married. We had first child, the second child before we came back. We were 3 years over there.
Wow. When we were playing phone tag, calling each other back and forth, trying to schedule a time for this interview, I called you on Veterans Day this year. and thanked you for your military service. And you said something to me that I still think about all the time, believe it or not. You told me that you are just one of many generations of your family that have served in the military. And I think that is a beautiful legacy that your family carries into our world today. Can you tell me a little bit about these many generations of military service?
Well, from my husband and me, we had 4 children. These 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. Let's see. No, I got to put those people in order, you know. Anyways, my daughter had 4 children. My oldest son had 4 children. And then my number 2 son, he only had 2. And then number 3 son, well, he had 4, but 3 of the 4 were adopted.
Mm-hmm.
He only really had 1. But so all of my children, the majority of them, somebody has served in the family. And right now, my one grandson, he's father, he's married, happy marriage, at least I think it is, and he's in the service.
I think it's a really special legacy that you and your husband have handed down to your children and grandchildren.
We had, at last 4th of July, we had 134 years of service in the military from my husband and me down. That's
Amazing.
a lot of years. But
It is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of years. I have a question for you. Today, after all of these years have passed since your childhood, and the years rebuilding after the Holocaust, why do you share your story today?
simply so young people in school can learn from it. Learn what you can, and then what isn't right, don't just accept it and look the other way. If it isn't right, it's wrong.
Yeah.
There is no in between.
Yeah.
So I just figured, just like this book.
Yeah. Yeah, so we brought this book with us today. You wrote this book with your son.
My
right?
youngest son.
Why did you decide to write down your story?
Because so many people have said, you need this in writing.
Yeah.
You need to put it down. And, well, there may have been 20 or 30,000 Jews in Hongqiu. I never quite could get a straight answer. I always assumed, or I heard it somewhere, there were 20,000 of us there. And then when I was talking to the curator for the Shanghai Museum there, he said there were 30,000, so make up 25,000 halfway through, right?
Yeah.
Either way, a lot of people wound up in Shanghai. And the Chinese, this is their way of life. For us over here, like if we have exchange students, they always marvel at how much green space we still have in this country
Yeah.
that they don't have in
Yeah.
theirs.
Very different way of
Yes.
life. Well, I have read this memoir that you've put together, and I think that it really captures some of these significant stories of life in Shanghai, of your escape from Germany. What did it mean? Maybe you don't know, but what did it mean for your son to work on this project with you?
He was one of the ones that always kept saying, "Mom, you gotta write it down."
Yeah. So it's important to your kids that this story is remembered.
And believe it or not, I am the only Jew in this family in all of these other generations, but each one of these kids, when Hanukkah comes, they can light the menorah.
Beautiful.
It's just, they're doing it for me, and I think that's great.
Yeah, I think that's very special.
Yeah.
I want to read a passage from your book,
Okay.
if that's okay with you. In the very beginning, there's a series of acknowledgments, who this book is written for, this beautiful dedication here. And it's something that as we at the Holocaust Center, as we read your book and actually use it as a resource in teaching children that come into the museum or into the classroom, this is a dedication that, really is special to us because it reflects our mission and why we are sharing about the history of the Holocaust. So I'm going to read this to you. I would love to hear a little bit about what this means to you. So you wrote here, "To the survivors, there was much between here and there, and yet you persevered. You found your new home in one of the many countries that eventually took in refugees, and you thrived. Though our story starts in terror, it ends in joy and peace." And you also write, "To those who have never seen terror, it is my sincere hope that you never see the type of persecution that the Nazis brought to a fever pitch. But if you do, this book is for you, to remind you that this too shall pass. Do all that you can do to stop such oppression when it starts. But should you be the victim, there is hope. Cling to it." It kind of chokes me up to hear that. I think that's really powerful.
And my father was the one that kept saying tomorrow will be better. We knew tomorrow won't be any better than yesterday, or we knew that, but just hearing him say that made the difference. He had hope, a lot of hope, and yet he never got to leave Shanghai. He's buried over there.
How special, though, to continue carrying that message forward, though, that message of hope. It reminds me that, we can overcome the troubles of the day, that we can continue to persevere. And it's such an incredibly important message. It's such an incredibly important lesson that we can carry forward from the Holocaust. I have one more question for you before we end today. I asked why you share your story. My other question is it hard to share your story?
Yes, but I do it. It's one of those things that somebody has to do it. It might as well be me.
Yeah.
Since I can still talk, I can still stand upright, I walk. I may be 92 years old, but I'm 92 years young.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for allowing me to share it.
Thank you, Lisa.
To make sure you don't miss an episode, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Let us know your thoughts on this episode. Our email is in the show notes. You can also connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at Holocaust and Humanity, and X and Facebook at CincyHHC. Hear My Story is a production of the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanity Center. The center's mission is to ensure that the lessons of the Holocaust inspire action today. This series is part of the Cynthia and Harold Gutman Family Center for Storytelling and is generously supported by Margaret and Michael Valentine. Visit us in person at Historic Union Terminal in Cincinnati, Ohio, or online at holocaustandhumanity.org. Managing producer is Ann Thompson. Consulting producer is Joyce Kamen. Technical producer is Robert Mills. Technical director is Josh Emerson. Select music is by Kik Lee. This is recorded at the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanity Center in Cincinnati, Ohio.